You're tuned in to the Big Smoke Chronicle podcast, where we get to interview seasoned professionals in finance, fintech, and entrepreneurship. We go beyond the surface to bring you the experiences, lessons, and skills that matter most in today's world of work. So, let's dive in.
Hello and welcome to the Big Smoke Chronicles. Here at the Big Smoke Chronicles, we have honest conversations with seasoned professionals and entrepreneurs to gain pearls of wisdom. Today, we've got Thabiso. Thabiso has 10 years of experience in accounting. He's trained at the Big Four. He's training for a marathon, and he's the winner of the 35 under 35 accountancy age. Thabiso, welcome.
Thank you. I always feel so intrigued and I have a moment like, oh my gosh, is that me? Talking about me. But yeah, no, thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here today and hopefully be able to share some wisdom, as you say.
So Thabiso, if you take us back to the beginning of your journey, when you were 18, 21, was accountancy a passion of yours, or did you kind of fall into it strategically?
So when I was 18, I was all the way in South Africa. I just finished my 12th grade. I think we used to in South Africa call it matric. And I actually wanted to be in performing arts. I wanted to go be in theater. I wanted to dance and do all of that. But I mean, at the same time, I so happened to actually have some, be smart. And I was quite good in accounting. So I remember getting my results, did really well, had a scholarship as well to study further and everything. And my parents were like, you're going to go study accounting. So I kind of knew if I didn't pursue my career then at the time in performing arts and whatever, I was pretty good with accounting and I liked it. I liked numbers and stuff. So that's when I ended up just pretty much being in accounting and studying it. And so in South Africa, it kind of works you have to have studied accounting to be able to sort of be in study further, qualify as a chartered accountant and everything. So I did my undergrad in accounting sciences, did my honors in it, and then just left uni, went straight into what we call articles in South Africa, which in the UK is the apprenticeship and stuff like that. So I did that for 3 years. And in that period, you write your 2 board exams, which ultimately qualify you to be a chartered accountant. After that, I always knew when I was doing my articles that I wanted to leave South Africa and I wanted to be in London. I've always just been I want to go to London. So at the time I was working for one of the Big Four, as you mentioned, and I trained with the Big Four in South Africa. And I then got the opportunity to come over with the Big Four organization to continue sort of my journey. And I just so happened I was doing my articles in auditing, and I came over as an audit assistant manager. Actually then sort of grew up the ranks. And at the time when I was doing my secondment, I think that's where we met.
Yes.
So we met when I was doing my 3-month secondment period. And I just we hit it off and it was great. I remember the amazing feedback you gave me in terms of working in the audits and stuff. Came back and I was an audit assistant manager. Then I was an audit manager. And while I was an audit manager, that's when I was oh my gosh, as much as I love audit, I always known I love audit. I mean, I was an auditing tutor in uni. I love teaching so accounting and all that. But I just knew a part of me, as much as I love the client facing and all those kind of stuff, I loved teaching people more that. And I think that just stems from coming from a background of my mom was a teacher and all that, family members were sort of in the educational space. And I was this is what I love more. And that's when I was at the Big Four at the time, I decided to pivot my career to sort of do a secondment in learning and development, which is how I got here to this point now.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that inclusive learning is a big part of your brand.
Yeah.
And it's a big passion. And I think we'll touch on that a bit later.
Yes.
But for anyone starting out in accountancy, what are the different routes in terms of, is it necessary to get a training contract? Is it best to study accountancy at university, or could you, for instance, do the sciences and then pivot into accounting? What about the size of firms? What's the difference between a Big Four, a mid-tier?
Okay, so I'll start with the first one. So the beauty actually of sort of being in the UK, I mean, it was the biggest shock for me, but because I know in South Africa, you kind of have to. sort of study accounting to be allowed to sort of practice and qualify. But in the UK, it works slightly different, right? Which I think is really beautiful. Like you could have a history degree, a degree in arts, in education, whatever, and be able to still pursue a career in sort of the accountancy profession. And so I guess like it just comes back like, and also added to that, like in the UK particularly, which also makes it even more accessible, is you don't even need to be a graduate to sort of embark on this journey. You could join as a school leaver. So straight from school, like embark on this journey. Yes, it might be slightly longer in terms of your duration of getting the qualification, but the opportunity is still there, you know, from school straight into, you know, working in like small organization, medium-sized organization, even like big, like the Big Four, you can find yourself in those spaces straight out of school. But then also the other opportunity is quite great in the UK. They have like placement years. So while you're in uni, you get an opportunity to work there for a year and then go back into sort of a university, finish your qualification and degree and everything, and then be able to still kind of decide, actually, do I want to pursue this career or not? Which I guess gives you like the taste of what's out there in the real world, the world of work, which is the other way in which you can do it, you know. But I think in the UK, it just works slightly different. It's more accessible. You don't have to have an accounting degree. And you also don't even have to have a degree. You could go straight out of school and sort of join on the school leavers sort of program straight out of school,
okay.
You know? And in terms of firms, organizations and size, I mean, I've gotten to experience both sides of the world. I've gotten to sort of experience working in the Big Four and also like in two different like geographics. I've been in South Africa and now I've been in the UK, and I've worked in the Big Four from both. And then I pivoted my career in 2023 when I sort of did L&D and I joined a medium-sized organization. And I think the difference is, I mean, coming from the Big Four, you find at the Big Four, there's a lot of like structures, processes, procedure, very big, sort of like big organizations, a lot of people. But when you sort of join and you sort of work with like talent in this like sort of like your medium-sized firms, very different. A lot of yes, there is processes, yes, there is protocol, but there's also a lot of, I'll say like freedom in a way to sort of have an aspect of just like tailoring certain stuff and making it more accessible because the numbers are less, you know, you really sense to have that direct impact in the kind of work that you do with the, you know, the talent and so forth. And like, you know, when you're at a big organization, there's just so many of them that it's not as, but you can sort of find ways to create that impact in the little sort of initiatives that you do. And like in the medium-sized or small organizations, you feel it directly, you know, because your intakes are smaller, you know, and sort of like your learning and all that is more impactful and so forth. But yeah, that's pretty much what I was saying.
Oh, okay. So that's quite an interesting balance.
Yeah.
I got the sense that perhaps in a smaller firm, it's smaller intakes.
Yes, definitely.
Whereas and there's a bit more kind of hands-on experience.
Yes,
you get a bit more rounded experience, whereas in a Big Four, you're probably working on bigger projects.
Yes, bigger projects, way more people, bigger teams.
Yeah.
And like at like medium-sized, smaller firms, you know, smaller teams, smaller intake, direct, like, you know, ROI, you can literally see it even like properly.
Okay. And if you could talk a bit more about so the routes. So if someone was interested in working in audit in the Big Four, what's the application process?
Okay, so would I advise people to go into the profession to start answering that question? I think it's a beautiful profession and I think it's really exciting and it opens so many doors, right? Fair right now in the industry, times are very different, you know, because things are evolving rapidly because of like AI and all of that. But I still would 100% talent, like any talent, like embark on a journey in the accounting space. In terms of internships and all that, I definitely would say like if you're a school leaver and you sort of have the spark or the drive, definitely go for it. You know, organizations are always willing to, like, there's always like rooms for intakes of school leavers, particularly around the September period. That's where you find organizations sort of having school leavers, placement students and grads as one. But then you tend to find like in January, it's mainly focused on like grad intakes.
Yes.
And definitely, without a doubt, all organizations do it. Whether you're small, medium, or large organization, the opportunities are always there for the grads. And it's kind of like, I would always say, like, because I've experienced recruitment and all that from both a big organization to small, medium-sized organizations as well. And I would say like the processes are pretty much similar. You know, you have the pre-application, the screening interviews, the actual like inviting to come through to what we call assessment centers, where the grads sort of like, or talent would have an opportunity to get one-on-one interviews with like people from the organization. They would do like things like group tasks, individual tasks and all that. The process is pretty much the same, like in all types of organizations. What becomes different is how these like on-the-day experiences are, you know, how the group task could be set up, who your interviewers are, if they do even have an individual task, you know. But as the world evolves, a lot of these kind of stuff are becoming more digitalized, which is quite exciting. Yes. A lot of use of things like AI platforms and stuff to sort of make this more, I guess, accessible as well as inclusive and really cater to your now everyday like Gen Z and our upcoming Gen Alpha talent. So yeah.
So, okay, so that moves on to sort of the next segment of the podcast, which is if you had a crystal ball. So in 10 years, will accountants be more data analysts, consultants?
I think in 10 years, because I think it nicely sort of links to the other question you just asked now about like the kind of skills and stuff. I think in 10 years, a lot of focus will be like placed on the ability to really engage with like data. So your ability to really like sort of tap into like analytics and, you know, the use of technology, like those will become like quite crucial skills. But I still am a firm believer that as much as those will be a focus, the fundamentals will never go away. EQ, communication, you know, the ability to work, being a team player, being resilient and all that. Those will always be fundamental, no matter how many stuff could be introduced in terms of tools, your ability to work with data, be analytical thinking. Like, the fundamentals remain there because no matter what you're doing in all these, you will also be expected to work with people. You know, you'll be supposed to really be able to get through some tough situations. I mean, every day is not the same in sort of any job, you know? So you'll be expected to be resilient because at the end of the day, we do work in an ever-changing, the world's forever changing, you know? There's always new things being introduced and so forth. So I just think, so they will become quite important because of the big focus in the organization regarding like technology and all those kind of stuff. But I think the fundamental skills will always be just
that's incredible. That's quite reassuring to know that although we're quite a fast-moving environment with technology, the underlying core kind of skills, the EQ, and perhaps the emphasis will be more on those skills.
Yes,
because we've got AI to do a lot more of it.
Exactly
for us.
Exactly, and I think a lot of when it comes to like things like AI and stuff, the big like hoo-ha right now in organizations is there's these exciting tools that are making things more efficient, bringing a lot of cost efficiencies rather in aspects. But the big thing is around people being able to use these tools.
You're deeply involved in sort of technical training.
Yes.
And we often talk about access into the profession, but what about belonging once you're inside?
I love that question. I love that so much. And the reason why I love the question is because it touches into a space that I'm just very passionate about, which is like DEI stuff. And I think when it comes to belonging.
Just quickly, what is DEI? So some of our viewers may not know.
Okay, so DEI is diversity. Some say the E is equality, but mainly actually the E is mainly focused now on equity and diversity, equity, and inclusivity, right? So that's what DEI is. And what this is coupled with, which is the one aspect that a lot of people tend to forget, but not actually realize that the resultant of doing these well feeds into the ability to create an environment where people feel a sense of belonging, right? And how you sort of build that is through various avenues, such as being the ability to create a space that enforces psychological safety for a lot of people, right? Where people are able to come and each and every day feel like they do not have to come as a version that is not themselves, but you can come in your true, authentic self, no matter where, you know, you are and what it is you're working with, whichever team you're engaging with, but you're able to be your true self in each and every space. That in itself allows to invite the true nature of what belonging is, because the moment you're able to feel like you can be yourself, you know, easily those that you engage with sort of create that space, and you find yourself being in spaces where you feel like you have a sense of belonging, right? Because for as long as you don't feel part of, or you don't feel like you can show up in your true self, you'll never feel part of anything, i.e. therefore you will never feel the space or the aspect of belonging, right? So I think it's that. And within like sort of creating that in learning, in the learning space, I think it's the ability to just really understand what your stakeholders want, to understand what people want. And ask, because I always say it's in my role, like I might not bring the money, right? But as much as I don't bring the money, my ROI is based on how I create convenience for the people, because the people in the organizations are my clients, right? So how do I bring convenience to you as an individual in this space, in this organization? Through understanding that and hearing you, I then am able to create stuff and sort of that will enforce the ability to make you feel seen or heard or feel empowered and sort of developing in your skills. Automatically that feels and feeds into creating a place of belonging.
Okay.
You know?
Okay.
Yeah.
And what's been, I suppose, what are the biggest challenges you see in terms of, how do we make it from a metric into a reality?
So I'm assuming like it's like, how do we go away from an organization just having like a checklist of stuff? They're like, oh, it's just like a checklist, and actually making sure that that checklist is a lived sort of like experience and it's really being done and people are feeling the impact. I think it boils down to one, before you sort of start off with anything, understanding like the why, like why it is that we're doing this, right? Because the moment you understand the why, you're then able to really create like your different measures, right? And your measures could be a combination of like, let's say technical stuff, but also like the personable stuff, you know? Because at the end of that, once you've created your measures, right? It allows you to be like, okay, at the end of this, the why was this, and the why stemmed from stakeholders saying this, or people saying that, or the organization wanting to achieve this. Once you've understood that, and then you're able to explain that to the right people, so the leaders of any organization and to the people that will engage in these platforms or in these initiatives, once you have both parties on the same page, that automatically allows you to be able to then go ahead, roll out. And then ultimately, as you're sort of doing this, you're able to do the check-ins to see is impact actually being introduced by what you're doing, you know? And then becomes very important is at the end, you then see whether you now assess the sustainability of what it is that you're doing. Has everything that you've done be sustainable? And will it be sustainable in the long term as well? And that could be sort of measured through different avenues.
Okay, you know? Brilliant. Yeah. So I understand that you're actually talking about this
topic.
You've got a talk or a presentation.
Yeah, it's very exciting. So I'm doing my first speaking opportunity in the UK, which is quite like exciting. So I'm speaking at the FAB. So it's the Finance, Accounting and Bookkeeping event in Birmingham on the 12th, but it starts on the 11th and so the 12th and 11th, that's when the event happening. And the topic that I ultimately be speaking about is on how to make sort of technical training stick within the Gen Z sort of like space. Because right now, there's different ways in which learning is evolving. But, you know, there's different ways as well that people like the Gen Z and stuff want to be sort of like skilled with, sort of like instilled with the right skills. So that's ultimately what the topic is. And I think it leads nicely to sort of like a recent article I did with AJ Chambers, the team that sort of run the top 35 under 35 awards, which the article was about inclusive learning. So those two kind of go hand in hand in terms of making learning stick while you're making sure that it's also inclusive to everyone. But yeah.
Could you give us an overview of sort of financial statements in terms of what are financial statements for someone who's got no idea, 101 accounting?
So what are financial statements? I'll say a financial statement is ultimately like a snapshot of a business's financial performance, right? So ultimately it's how well the business is like doing, right? Because every organization, they do what they do because at the end of the day, they want to make money. So a financial statement shows a snapshot of how it is. They start from making money. In order to make money, you need people. In order to have people, you need some capital, you need some investment, you know, and it all starts there. And then as part of that, you incur expenses, and expenses can be broke between like day-to-day expenses to like assets. certificates that you acquire to be able to generate this money. And they consist of like primary statements, like your income statement, which is all about the money coming in and out and money being spent. And then you have your financial statement, your financial position, which is a balance sheet. Also, you have things like your cash flow, which focuses on the cash movements of the business. And then you have like your statement of changes in equity, which is self-explanatory. And ultimately, like, it all stems from what we call the accounting equation, right? Which is assets minus liabilities equals equity, and that's literally it. So that's what it is. So it's a snapshot of the company's like financial performance and how it is they're making their money and they're operating in a set of what we call primary statements.
Okay, that's a really helpful, like 2-minute explanation of
I hope so.
What financial statements are.
Yeah.
So I suppose if someone's 21 and they're embarking on a career in accountancy, what should they consider?
That's interesting. What should they consider? I think if you are 21 and you're trying to embark on a journey into the accounting space, I would first of all, say, do not stress about the fact that you don't know the debits and the credits. I think the UK systems and platforms and organizations ensure that you are equipped enough to understand what the debits and credits are about from your first year already, right? What also they should know is it opens your mind up to so much. You don't know what you think you know up until you do it, right? And that's one thing accounting will show you. It is not easy, but one thing is the rewards at the end are absolutely phenomenal. And once you have it, and I think it's one of the professions and even the qualification that you get from it, it opens you up to so many industries that just doesn't limit you to the accounting profession because of the skills that sort of embarking on this journey brings you, like allows you to have the ability to understand an organization. And once you're able to understand an organization within the first 30 minutes or an hour, you can do so much in your everyday life. Just being able to service a client, engage with people, building rapport with like quite senior people and all those kind of stuff. So I think that's it. Like, don't be threatened or feared by the debits and credits, and just understanding that there's so much that this profession in itself can do for you. It's just taking that leap of faith and just knowing that you don't know what you think you know. Because once you're in it, that's when you ultimately will kind of like grasp the principle of actually, I can do so much with this.
Okay.
And I think it's a beautiful career. I think it's a beautiful profession. If I had it my way, if I had that ball, what did you call it?
Yeah.
Or if I had my magic wand, I'd make everyone do accounting. Yeah.
Okay, so isn't that a hypothetical? If you had a time machine and you could go back 10 years to the young Thabiso, and there's one bit of advice you would give him,
what would it be?
What would it be?
Oh my gosh, I would be like, you about to eat this life up. I'm joking. But like, I would say to the 10-year-old or like the young Thabiso 10 years ago, because I'm 32 now, that would be 22 years ago. I would literally be like, the world is literally your oyster and never hold back. Be it because of things like imposter syndrome, that thing, everyone experiences it, right? And you'd be surprised how many people wing stuff every day in their life. It's just all about just putting yourself out there and forever be, because one thing I never liked was confidence. I've always been confident. So, I mean, being confident can lead you anywhere and put you in spaces or put you at tables that you never envisioned yourself on. So that's what I'd say. But looking back to that child now, like looking back to that now and like be like, damn, that 22-year-old would be really proud of what this 32-year-old has done so far. So I think we're pretty much doing well for now. But yeah, I'd say that. I'd say the world is your oyster. Just take up everything.
I love that, Thabiso. That's a positive message to give your younger self. And it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much. This has been nice. The view here is scrumptious. Oh my gosh, I love it. But yeah, this has been really lovely. Thank you so much for inviting me to the podcast.
And thank you to the viewers and the subscribers. And as Thabiso said, the world is your oyster. So go out there and get it. See you next time at the Big Smoke Chronicles.
Thank you for tuning in to the Big Smoke Chronicle podcast. We hope that you've enjoyed this episode. And if you enjoy the podcast and would like to support, remember to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.